Angel Dawn Wilson didn't have an easy life. When she was a toddler, her father, Oliver Rice, won sole custody rights of her because of her mother's addiction to various drugs. He wanted to raise his daughter in a safe environment, away from her mother's corrosive presence. For most of Angel's childhood, her father's decision seemed to be working. The pair lived in Spokane, Washington for her entire life. She was a fiery child, fiercely independent and opinionated, but she loved her father, and the two generally got along very well. This all changed when Angel entered middle school. Her father claims the change in Angel's personality was rather sudden and unexpected. I, however, wonder if there was more going on at school, or even at home, that nobody knew about. That, though, is my own conjecture. When Angel was in middle school, she started experimenting with various illegal substances and dating much older men. She also met the girl who would soon become her best friend and literally partner in crime, Carrie Bizzano. The two girls quickly became joined at the hip and started their reign of terror. Carrie recalls how many of their classmates were actively afraid of them. They were the bad kids in every sense of the phrase. It wasn't unusual for Angel and Carrie to skip class so they could smoke behind the school. Angel also ran away from home many times, usually with Carrie by her side. These weren't usual heat-of-the-moment runaway attempts, however. Angel seriously wanted to leave Spokane and her entire life behind. She and Carrie would plan out their trips beforehand, and then, after they had run away, the girls would dye their hair to disguise their true identities. They would also stay with their addict and criminal adult friends, bouncing from house to house until they were inevitably discovered by the police or their parents. Carrie recalls that Angel was a lot more familiar with this wide network of criminality than Carrie was, and that her friendship with those criminals ensured the girls' comfort during these runaway attempts. They never had to worry about where they were going to sleep or get their food. All they had to do was hang out at a partial stranger's house, doing drugs and waiting to be discovered. After one such runaway attempt, the girls received more than a slap on the wrist. They were arrested and put into a juvenile detention facility. The facility kept the girls apart, making sure they had totally different schedules and were never alone together. The two still found ways to stay in contact by passing notes, but even so, this extended period of time without one another would be a catalyst. The girls were never as close after their arrest as they had been before, perhaps because Carrie was beginning to realize the consequences of her actions, while Angel just became more attached to her criminal lifestyle. This, among many other things, would cause the girls to start drifting apart. Angel kept slipping further into a darker lifestyle, although Carrie had her limits. Carrie, looking back on that period of her life now, realizes that this is probably what saved her. Carrie might have met Angel's fate, whatever that may be, had she not set those limitations. One person that drove a wedge between the two was one of Angel's boyfriends. He was in his 30s, a fellow drug addict who also dealt drugs, which is how he and Angel had met. Angel couldn't have been any older than 15 or 16. Carrie remembers that he was actively physically abusive to Angel, even in front of other people, and that Carrie just couldn't understand why Angel would stay with him. Carrie couldn't, at the time, see past her friend's tough-as-nails facade to the deeper problems the teenager must have been struggling with. Carrie did dabble in a lot of drugs and crime, just like Angel, but according to her, Angel took things to a whole new level when she became addicted to methamphetamines. Angel was barely a teenager, and yet she was hanging around drug addicts and hardened criminals, attending their parties and smoking at their houses. Carrie didn't mind all that nearly as much as she minded the meth, and she and Angel started to drift apart because of Angel's continued use of the substance. For Carrie, all of this acting out fell more into the realm of teenage rebellion, albeit a more rebellious path than most teenagers ever walk. For Angel, this was quickly becoming her lifestyle. When Angel entered the 10th grade, she dropped out of Joel E. Ferris High School and began bouncing between friends' houses. Her father, desperate for a solution to his daughter's behavior, sent her to live with a close family friend. This family friend enrolled Angel in a youth addiction recovery program called Daybreak. The program involved several excursions into the wider Spokane area, one of which took the troubled teens to a roller skating rink. There, Angel would meet Will Wilson, a young machinist from the country. He was 21 when they met, and when Angel approached him, he believed that they were similar in age. Unbeknownst to him, Angel was only 17. They began dating and quickly fell deeply in love with one another. 4 months into their relationship, Will knew this was the woman he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. He went to Angel's father with an old-fashioned request for his daughter's hand in marriage. This was when he discovered that Angel was only 17. However, Angel's father was shockingly willing to go along with this plan of marriage. He viewed Will as a positive influence and hoped that Angel would settle down in married life. This initially seemed to be the case. The couple married and moved in together without issue. However, on August 10, 2007, Will and Angel were watching television when Will noticed Angel was smoking meth instead of her usual cigarettes or marijuana. Will became infuriated that his wife would endanger herself in this way and told her that she had to quit the drug cold turkey or he would divorce her. The argument quickly turned nasty, and Angel stormed out of the house in a fury. Will woke up the next morning to find her wedding ring on his bedside table. Angel would never return, nor would she ever contact Will, Carrie, or Oliver. At that point, she and Carrie had grown apart. Since she had dropped out of school and had, presumably, stopped attending her drug rehab program, the only real contacts she had were Will and her father, and whatever addicts and criminals she was using to get her drugs. The police believed that Angel had simply run away yet again, and if I was her father or husband, I would probably assume the same thing, if I'm being honest. After all, Angel was only 17, hardly an age group known for making rational decisions, and she had run away so many times before, only to return or be found. However, as time stretched on and nobody heard from Angel, everyone realized that something much darker could have happened to the teen. No clues or tips ever came forward, although police believe there's a wide group of people who knew or know where Angel went. They interviewed her friends and as many of her criminal contacts as they could find, but all of them were incredibly tight-lipped, probably assuming that they would get Angel into even more trouble if they turned her over to police and her family. Out of their silence, a cold case was born. I couldn't find any information on what Will did after his wife's disappearance. Her father, however, continued to search for her and participates in various missing persons groups and get-togethers. He has shared that he suffers with sleeplessness because of his daughter's disappearance and that he constantly wonders what happened to her. Angel's life was a difficult one that, while having its ups and downs, seemed to overall be sending the teen into a downward spiral. Her story is a heartbreaking one, but not one that is totally unfamiliar. The bitterest part of this entire case, for me, is that her father fought for her to have a better life and to have more opportunities than her mother. Ultimately, however, she befell an even worse fate than her mother, disappearing into the criminal underbelly of Eastern Washington. Angel was a Caucasian girl with strawberry blonde hair and green eyes. She has a scar on her chest and a tattoo on her right hand. She may go by the name Angel Rice. Angel could be alive right now, still hiding from her past. Most likely, however, she is dead, either at the hands of her criminal contacts or the drugs she was so dependent upon. Please, if you have any information on Angel, either regarding her disappearance or where she is now, contact the corresponding numbers in the description below. Please, help bring this missing child home.